Good morning. Submerged. Sorry, I still have PTSD from VBS. We had a great week at VBS, by the way. We had about 84 kids and about 50-some workers, and it was a great time. Was had by all, and with a lot of repetitive singing. Turn your Bibles, Exodus chapter 4. We will actually finish chapter 4. Who would have known it would have taken 6 long weeks to have gotten us through chapter 4? But there was a lot there. Exodus chapter 4. You know what you have to look forward to? Actually, you have something to look forward to next week. And we just put a little pressure on him right now. Tyler is going to fill in. So, and he will do well. I just had that sense about him. I felt it through the force, right? By the way, I liked how you caveat that to if the song went bad, everybody knew how to blame Tyler. Because that's how we roll on a staff. Exodus chapter 4. Exodus chapter 4. I don't know I did that. And at the lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone, and it was then that she said, "A bridegroom of blood," because of circumcision. And the Lord said to Aaron, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moses." So he went and met him in the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron the words of the Lord, which he had sent him to speak, and all the sights that he commanded him to do. And Moses and Aaron went together and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoke to Moses, and the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel and that he had seen their afflictions, they bowed with their heads and worshipped. All right. Moses, I want you to go and be my mouthpiece. And then all of a sudden, you have a text that kind of pops up that's like, and then Moses goes and things are going good. And then, what? Red car. Out of nowhere. You have this cryptic kind of language that pops into the text. Moses is happily going along. His wife and kids are with him. And all of a sudden, the Lord shows up and says, "I'm here to kill you." I would be rather confused about that as well. And most people, when they come to this passage, very quickly look at it and go, "What? Why would God show up at the camping place where they are for the sole purpose of killing Moses? If he's going to kill Moses, why didn't he kill him at the burning bush? I mean, he's out in the middle of nowhere there, could have killed him, hid the body, and he says, it's God. It's like a bad episode of Snap when God decides to kill you, isn't it? It's funny when you laugh, folks. I'm tired too. VBS was a big thing, but it's funnier when you laugh. I got to get feelers, Raymond, feelers. Thanks. And so you have this cryptic language show up. Why does God choose to kill Moses? And you know what the cool part about the scripture here in this passage is? It doesn't overtly tell you. There isn't an overt understanding. Now, there are things that we put together through context as to why this is happening. But you're not going to go to it and look at it. Well, one of the reasons, if you look at Jewish scholars and you read them, some of them look at this and they go, well, what has happened is God told Moses to go to Egypt and talk to Pharaoh. But he didn't tell Moses to take his family. Well, that's cool. That's great. And it seems plausible. However, it doesn't really fit with the rest of the context of the passage, now does it? I'm here to kill you because you brought your family, and then she circumcises her kid. And God doesn't kill him. So Moses, I'm going to kill you because you brought your wife and kids, doesn't fit the passage. How does he look? Well, you got to look at some context clues. First of all, if you remember from last week, remember Moses is to go to Pharaoh and say, Israel is my firstborn. Israel is my child. Let Israel go, or because you haven't let Israel go, I'm killing your firstborn. What was the requirement of every male to perform on every male progeny of his? The rite of circumcision. And by the 8th day, if you look at Genesis chapter 17, as a matter of fact, God lays it out to Abraham that every male on the 8th day is to be circumcised, even all of those who are your slaves, those who you purchased, those who may not even worship the same God as you. If they are in your household, if they are owned by you, they all snip. Young, old, infant or not. And what has happened, as we can see from the text here, is that Moses has not done that. Now we know the child is older than 8 days, and so he hasn't done it for a while. Well, what's happened? The underlying current of this passage is that while Moses has lived in Midian, Moses has gone with the flow of things. Jethro is not a Jew. He is the high priest of Midian. And while the Midianites and Israel have some similarities, and they may even at times have some familiar relations, they are not the same people. And they aren't abiding by the same covenant. And what Moses has done, because of where he has lived, is he has allowed his child to go uncircumcised. And now God has called him to do a mission for him in which he is going to argue about God's command and who Israel is, and yet he hasn't fulfilled the very first basic requirement of a Jewish male. What happens is he has sought peace in the household. Because you can tell by the language that Zipporah is not a big fan of this custom. What happens? The Lord comes to meet him, to kill him, because he hasn't circumcised his child. You look at this and you go, so what? Well, here's the thing. When you seek for peace in your household over the things that God has commanded you to do, you do so to your own detriment and hurt. Moses has sought to get along, to go along, to get along. And as we see throughout the text, that doesn't work well. I know folks that have married folks from non-Christian religions. I knew a soldier in basic training, actually a drill sergeant. He married an Islamic woman. And so for peace in the household, being a young Catholic boy that he was, he converted to Islam. And he sat for the longest time trying to convince me of the similarities between these two faiths. But we both pray. Great. We both believe in God. Great. We both believe in Jesus. Great. You both pray to not the same entity. You both believe in God, but it's not the same God. And you both believe in Jesus, but not the same Jesus Christ. Yippee-ki-yay, so what? But he opted for peace in his home. And so what he did was he embraced something that God has said don't do. And he had peace in his home, but does he have real peace in his life? And when he goes and stands before the Father, is it going to go well for him? See, what happens is we embrace this model. We do the go along to get along. Can't we all just be friends? And I hear this all the time, especially when I talk about theology. People go, well, why does that matter? Your inability to understand why something mattered, does it make it not matter? I have no ability really to understand algebra. I don't know why the teacher kept asking me to find her x, but apparently she missed it because right there in the diagram, there it was, right above the slide, right there, there's your x. I don't possess necessarily the faculties to understand algebra. The worst sin Satan ever perpetrated upon humanity is when he put alphabet into math. Does it matter that I don't know it? And does it matter since I don't know it? Does it matter that it's not important? I don't think it's important, therefore it's not. You would all look at me, those of you who know algebra, and go, you're an idiot. Yes, I am. My inability to understand its importance does not make it unimportant, does it not? And so what happens is we come to Scripture with that rack and stack theology and go, well, I don't understand, Brother Ashley, why this is important. Oh, great. I don't understand why algebra is important. I don't understand why you take breath. Is that important? It is. And so what happens is we come to this and we go, well, since it doesn't matter, why do we pursue it? Because it has something to do with the relationship of God that you wish to have. Do you wish to have a very vague and unknowing influence of God? Do you wish to have a vague and unknown of how God is and what He does in your life? Or do you wish to pursue God as you pursued your spouse? Trust me, I own 50 books and stalked her for a year. She's not in here, so you can't tell her. I stalked her for a year. I have a book by Karl Barth. You guys probably don't even know who, except this guy and that guy right over there. I haven't read yet. That was 12 years ago. Had to think about it for a moment. Still, probably won't ever read that book. What does it matter? What does it matter whether or not Moses circumcises this boy? It's a small thing, right? At this point in the game, it's going to be an extremely painful thing. And if you saw the implement by which they use, it's really going to hurt. See, what happens is we bring this rack and stack, we bring this peace at all costs into the organization, into the home, into our life. And what we then begin to do is embrace this idea that unity is better than following the will of God. And while I am a huge fan of unity, because community and commune, they're kind of compound together there. But unity where all the rules come off is not unity. There are churches down in Austin that are very open. And when I say open, they are very accepting of individuals who live a lifestyle that God has forbidden. And here's the thing. We all live lifestyles that God has forgiven us, and by the grace of God, He saved us. But instead of changing your lifestyle to conform with the will of God, people maintain a lifestyle which God has said is sinful and repugnant before Him, and yet try to claim community or communion with the will of God, because it doesn't really matter. See, we rack and stack the things of God on whether or not they matter or not. We come to the text with an assumption to then prove the assumption when we come to the text and go, see, I found my verse. Or we don't even look for a verse. We just simply go, well, I don't think God would allow this to happen. Have you read the text? No. Then you don't know what God would allow to happen. See, that should be your first question when you come. Moses knows what he must do. The Lord is there to kill Moses. And then one of the things that happens when we fit in this rack and stack theology, we go, well, it's not something God would kill me over. Yes, we only abide by the rules that the Almighty will smite us dead for. That's what the text says. Right? Well, it's not something He'll kill me over, so it's not that big a deal. Is that your philosophy when you come to the Lord? I only will do it as long as He doesn't kill me. Well, that's not faith, folks. That's legalism. Is that the faith you have? You look at the text. It's only a small thing. Remember, as we were looking at 1 Samuel, or actually we're now in 2 Samuel, the ark is on a cart. The cart rocks upon the ark rocks upon the cart. A man reaches out, noble task, touches the altar to keep it from falling, and what does God do? Kills him. Why? The text says you don't touch the ark, ever. Unless you're of a specific tribe of Levites, ever. But he's doing a good thing. Dead. You look at when the ark comes back. 70 men are dead. Why? Because either they looked at the ark in an unapproving way or they looked into the ark, which is something they weren't supposed to do. And guess what God did? He killed them. The sons of Aaron offer strange fire. And we don't know what it is, but they did something in the Holy of Holies they were never to do, and God killed them both. Just a little thing, right? Can't we all just get along and be nice and just accept the rack and stack of what we think are little things are? See, for God, this is not a little thing. This is the sign of the covenant with his people. I am sending you, Moses, to be the head, my mouthpiece to the Pharaoh, and you are not doing what you have been ordered to do. And if you're choosing not to do that for peace in your home, you are going to be a worthless mouthpiece to me. Big debate this week. If you've been watching TV, should one guy have endorsed another guy? Should he have not? And I've heard a lot of things about this all week. And people usually begin with, well, God wouldn't want you to keep an oath to somebody that isn't a good guy, right? And usually I ask you, ask the staff guys, I ask this question back. Have you read your verses about oaths? Well, no. Perhaps you should go and read those verses before you say God would never let that happen, should you? Well, it's only small. It's not like it wasn't like it was a blanket oath. Have you read the passages on oath taking? No. Perhaps you should go and read those before you make that statement. See, the world looks at us, and while we rack and stack that that's not important, when you can't fulfill your word, what does the world see? One of the great things, and you look back in church history, when John Huss was executed, John Huss was betrayed by the Emperor Sigismund. He was given safe conduct, safe passage, because he was going to be tried for a heretic, and he was called to answer to the claims. And really, the church was not interested in listening to this man. They were more interested in killing him. And so what they did was the emperor promised him safe conduct, and when he got there, the cardinal who represented the pope went to the emperor and said this: an oath to a heretic is no oath at all. Find that in that book. I can tell you right now, you will not. But prove me wrong. And they took John Huss, they arrested him, they threw him in a damp, dark prison, and then several weeks later, they burned him at the stake. You look back at church history, it's one of the darkest moments in church history because godly men lied openly and burned another godly man at the stake, supposedly. But it's a small thing. It's a little tiny thing. It's not that big a deal. In our eyes, yes, it is not that big a deal. The problem is God doesn't view our things through our eyes. Notice what happens. Zipporah goes, she takes a flint knife. My knives are razor sharp. When I work on mine, my edge is so nice, I can put it right there and shave all the way on the hair off my arm. Really upset Steph because she finds little clumps of hair everywhere. Well, I'm sure you can get a flint knife fairly sharp. That's going to be painful. And she cuts it. Now notice what happens here. Notice who cuts it. She takes the flint and cuts it and touches it to Moses' feet. She's not going over and going, ha, 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 da, da. No, that's not it. She takes it, cuts it off, and throws it really at the feet of Moses. So you see from the context who has been the major objector to this rite. She has. And being the major objector, she goes and makes it straight. Now, technically, she's not supposed to do this. But that's okay. They haven't been following God's commands up to this point anyway. See, when you don't follow what God puts forth, you make a mess of things. Poor Moses is on his way to do his task, and the Lord meets him to kill him. And notice what she says. You are a bridegroom of blood to me. This is not a positive thing. She's not like going, this, you will never see this in a Hallmark card. Dear Moses, thank you for the wonderful child. I'd just like to say, you are a bridegroom of blood to me. Thank you. It's not a positive thing. You can see her objection to even the activity just simply in the way she handles it and restates it. But the Lord relents. Moses doesn't die, but he causes a mess. Later on, Moses will do another little small thing. The Lord tells Moses to speak to the rock. You won't be here for that Sunday because now you know how it ends. Moses speak to the rock, and Moses in his anger strikes the rock with a stick. It's a small thing. Does it cost Moses later on? Moses doesn't get to see the promised land. He doesn't get to enter it. He can see it, but he can't enter it. And that's one of the charges as to why he's not able to. Small things. There's this big thing. It came out a long time ago. It was in a movie. I forget what movie it was in. Was it Forget the Small Stuff? Don't, forget the small stuff. Here's the problem. Everything is small stuff. It's just the degree to which you choose to focus on it. What might be important for Raymond Harris is not necessarily important for me. What might be important for Larry is not necessarily important to me. What might be important for everyone else in this room, I may look at it and go, I don't know why you're messing with that. For me, it's small stuff. For you, it's not. See, it's a varying degree of whose pet project it is. However, God isn't that capricious about small things. He's very precise. And when we begin to take our hermeneutic of what is important to us and apply it to what is important to God, what we then end up doing is put ourselves much on the path of this one here. But thankfully we can go, well, at least he's not going to kill me over it. And then we've already addressed that, because if that's how you're living your life, whether or not God is going to smite you dead or not, then that's really not faith. Moses, I've called you to be a leader, to represent Israel, who is my firstborn, yet you haven't done the very first command I've called you to do. Now that's taken care of. Moses is good. The situation is right. His wife isn't happy with him. He's probably going to sleep on the other side of the tent because of this circumcision. And then we go back. Notice how it went. It went swing one way and then swings right back. And the Lord said to Aaron, just another ADD moment. There's this little section here. Go into the wilderness and meet Moses. Now, here's the thing. While the writer is writing chronologically here, this event we know occurred further back, because as Moses is at the burning bush, God says Aaron is coming while they're talking. So sometimes the writers try to put things in chronology, but sometimes they have to wait till the story ends in one part to put the chronology part in, and we've got to look at the chronology in the chronology, otherwise it doesn't fit right. If you understood that sentence. Made sense to me. But I also, well, no, I won't go down that road. Go into the wilderness and meet Moses. So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord which he had sent him to speak, and all the signs which he commanded to do. And Moses and Aaron went, and they gathered all the elders of all the people of Israel. Now remember, Moses' complaint was, who am I? Who are you? They won't listen. I can't talk well. Send someone else. So Aaron, here's Aaron. He goes, they gather the people. Here's Aaron talking. So that solved that one objection. They won't listen. We'll get to that in just a second. Who am I? God addresses who Moses is. You will be a God. You will be like God to Aaron. I speak to you. You speak to Aaron. Pow. And they go and they gather all the elders. And remember, Moses' big complaint was, they're not going to listen to me. And Moses comes and Aaron speaks and they do the task. And I think if I were to say God wanted me to tell you all to give me all your money and I threw a stick on the ground and it turned into a snake, there'd be some of you reaching for your wallet right about now. Some of you would be reaching for your pistol, and that's okay because I don't like snakes. They die on sight. But if you didn't at that time and I went, nothing up my sleeve, not even powdered sugar. There's always a danger when you do this. One day I'm going to preach this sermon. I'm going to have a bag of powdered sugar in here and weird you people out. Puts a hand in there and wha! Not like that. But the hand is white like it's dead. And puts it back in. Do you not think that people will listen to that? And so the objections, every single one of them that Moses has, here in this verse, the summation is like, pow, and the people listened. They heard and saw the word of the Lord, and they listened. And then notice what it says, very interesting point. When they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel, that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped. Great! Great! God, back in Genesis chapter 15, promised Abram that we would be sojourners in a land that wasn't ours, that we'd become slaves, that we'd become oppressed, that we'd be oppressed for 400 years. The time has come for us to be released. God is going to punish the king that oppressed us, and we will leave wealthy. Great! These people bow down and worship the Lord. And then not more than a couple of chapters later, are grumbling at the men the Lord sent. And when they finally get out and things get difficult at the Red Sea, they grumble against the men God sent. And then when they get out and God feeds them, they begin to complain about the things God sent. Notice very quickly how they hear the things of God, they worship the face of the Lord, and then soon after, they swing back. What a fickle bunch of people. The leader who doesn't circumcise his child. The spouse who isn't really thrilled about the circumcision, even though the Lord is there to kill her husband. The people that listen but then soon turn against them, who then listen, who then turn against them, who then listen, who then turn against them. The Pharaoh who says he'll let them go but then balks. What a fickle group of people we have in this text. What a fickle bunch that they're high one moment on God and then they're low one moment on God. They follow after the Lord and then they don't do the things the Lord told them to do. You ever thought to yourself, how fickle I am? Not me, but you and me. Does that make sense? I read this passage and I read through it. I kept going, man, these people are fickle people. They are dense. And that's usually about the time when the Lord goes, Kind of like when you make a mistake and tell your wife that it's okay, it'll be all right, you'll know how to make it right, and you make the mistake, and then you don't have to look. Behind her is someone like this. Behind you is someone like this. I read this passage and I go, man, these people are not the sharpest knife in the box. And the Lord looks at me and says, that's right, Ashley. They're not, are they, Ashley? You have moments where you are told to do things and you resist doing them. You have commands of which things you are supposed to do to honor God in your life and for peace in the household or for the safety of well, it's not that big of a thing that you refuse to do them. Right, Ashley. You can see God's great presence in the fact that he does great and wondrous things in your life, and then after you've worshiped him and said, I'll never doubt you again, a couple of days later something happens and you doubt him again. Right, Ashley? Aren't they just a bunch of fickle people? Ashley. And look at what happens. We see, as we continue to read, that the Lord does not take these fickle people and crush them into dust. But yet he delivers them out of the hands of a wicked king, because he is a gracious and loving God. What they deserve at every turn is death. What they deserve at every turn for violating the command of God, as you see with Moses, is death. What they receive at every turn is grace. And a lot of times we look at life and we presume upon that grace because we utilize the motto of, well, God won't kill me for it, and you're presuming upon the grace of God's richness and glory and saying, well, since he won't kill me, it's okay for me to do. And that is a dangerous hermeneutic. And that is a dangerous way to live. You're here today. You go, well, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad of a person. I don't understand what makes me any worse than any other individual. The Bible tells us that if you've broken the smallest of the law, you've broken all of the law. And in the eyes of God, you are that bad. And it requires the death of his son to cover your sin. But I'm not really that bad. Gotcha. I get ice cream every night with sprinkles. I'm not that bad either. But I'm bad enough that Christ had to come and die upon a tree so that I can have a right relationship with him. The degree of what you think of good and badness is in your heart is nowhere near to the degree in which God looks at and sees the good and badness in your heart. And all of us, including the goodest of us all, requires the death of the Son. You're here today, and you would like to know more about what it means to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, who died for you in the midst of your being good enough. My microphone will be turned off. It'll be a conversation between one fallen individual talking to another fallen individual about the grace and mercy of our Lord and Savior. As the praise band comes and leads us in a song, if you will please stand.
Open your hymnals to 320.